Before we get started on today's video, I just need to mention the disclaimer. Nobody should copy or attempt to do anything that I'm doing in this video. This video is purely for educational purposes only. If in doubt about anything to do with the boiler or the gas, then you should get in a registered professional to inspect it and have a look for you. Do not take any risks or any chances when it comes to gas boilers if you do not know what you're doing. It's as simple as that. Okay, now that we've got that out the way, let me give you a bit of a backstory to today's repair. I've got a neighbor who's an elderly gentleman, and he contacted me recently and he said, I've got a Vaillant EcoTEC Pro 28 boiler, and all of a sudden it just would not come on anymore. He phoned somebody up and asked them if they could come out to have a look. And apparently he was told over the phone that most likely it's the board is faulty and the board would probably need replacing. And they quoted him £500 for parts and fitting. Anyway, he rang me. I don't normally do have anything to do with boilers. We just do general electronics repair. Anyway, he rang me up and he said, "Look, I'm a bit stuck here. I've got no hot water. I've been quoted £500 for parts and fitting to get this board changed out." Apparently, he was advised that it's quite common for the boards to fail on these because this model was manufactured in 2012. Most of the boards were manufactured in 2012 as well. So you can imagine it's 2024 now. So that's 12 years old, almost 12 years old. The boards, they tend to fail. So anyway, he contacted me and he said, look, I've got no hot water and can't afford to get this repaired at that price. So would you please, if you could, take some time out and if you could come and have a look at it for me. I thought, okay, you know what, let me go and help him out. And I had no intention of charging him or anything like that. It was purely just to help a neighbor out. So I went down. The first thing I did was this switch here on the boiler, it's got a fuse inside it. Okay, and this is where the main power comes off into the boiler. So the first thing I did was I checked the fuse inside here with the multimeter, and I can confirm the fuse was fine. There was continuity on that fuse. So then what I did was, because I already had some indication of what the fault might be, something on the board, it was more or less pretty straightforward to get that board or to get at that board and get it out of the boiler. So what I had to do was, there's two clips here and one here on the right. And if you push them in with your fingers, you can literally slide this cover, this white cover, off from the bottom. And then there's a hook on the top, two hooks. You lift it over those hooks and this cover will just come off. Okay. Then what you'll find is, once you've taken that cover off, you'll find the inside will look similar to this. And this plastic cover here, it will just, if you pull it from these clips here, it will fold down as it is in this picture here. And then what you'll find is there's a couple of clips around here, around here, around the top, around the sides, and around the back here. If you press those clips in, this plastic cover will just come straight off. Okay. Now, remember, before you do any of this, make sure that you've switched this off here. And if you want to be extra safe, you can even pull out the fuse so you know that there's no power going into the boiler. And we're not going to touch anything to do with the gas. So you should be okay. Right. So get back to where we were. So if you take off this plastic cover here, then what you will be greeted with is something that looks like this. This is with the plastic cover taken off. You will find the main board inside. The board that we had, that I was working on, is slightly different to this, but it's very similar. The good thing about this design is all of these connectors here, they just pull off. So you can actually pull them off. These connectors you can pull off. These ones you can pull off. This one here you can pull off. This here you can pull off to the side. These come off with clips. And there may be a couple around here around the back. But before you take anything off, what I would recommend is take a picture with your phone of this board and where all the connectors connect. So when you come to put it back, you know exactly which connectors go where. Once you've taken all these connectors off, then you'll have a couple of clips here. Can you see there's one here? There's one here. Once you push these clips back, this board will just lift out. There's no screws or anything. It's a really nice design the way they did it. It's basically just plugs and clips, and this board will just clip out. Once you've clipped that board out, you'll be presented with something like this. This is the board that was inside the EcoTEC Pro 28 Vaillant boiler, and this is exactly what it looks like. And what we'll do, we'll get onto the demonstration table and I'll give you a closer look at this. As soon as you take this board out of that plastic case, the first thing you want to do is turn this board over. And as you can see, there's 2 points here, 1 point here and 1 point here. What you want to do is you want to take a fully shielded set of needle nose pliers and you want to touch those 2 points here. What that will do is that will discharge that capacitor. Keep it on there for a couple of seconds, just say about 10 seconds, and then that should be fine. Once you've done that, that board should now be quite safe to handle. But I would also recommend you use rubber gloves just for extra safety. The boiler that was at his property, as you can imagine, he's an elderly man and he needs hot water. So we could not wait to try and repair this board because it may take some time. First, I'd have to test it and see what the faulty parts are, and then order them in and do the repair. Now, that might take up to 2 weeks. So what I said to him was, listen, let me have a look on eBay and see if I can find a replacement board and we can put that in. So at least you know, if it works, then at least you know you've got hot water. And the board that's come out of your boiler, what I can then do is I try and find the fault with it and try and repair it for you. So then in future, if your main board does go down, you've got a backup here and you can put it in and it'll be working straight away. So anyway, if you want to identify the PCB number of your board, there's 2 places where you'll find it. It's written here, right here, where it says 0020102264, and it's also written here on a sticker at the back. So those are the 2 places that you can identify which board you have, and you need that number because when you go searching for it on eBay, you have to search by that number to make sure you've got the exact PCB. Sometimes they'll have like a version 1 and a version 2, so they might improve something on the board and release a different version. If you match this number, then generally you should be fine, and it should be a drop-in replacement. Now, when you want to go looking for these boards on eBay, what you'll do is you'll type in Vaillant and then you type in the board number. So in our case, it was Vaillant 00201 and you'll get a whole host of them that will come up. As you can see here, there's one here, parts only, £35. There's one here which is most likely refurbished, £94.99. You've got £121 here. Now, you may see some listings like this, $49.99 to $89.99. So you've got to be careful here, because if you go into the listing here, then where it says $44.99, they're not actually selling you a board. What they're offering is a service where send your old one in, okay, and they will repair it and send it back to you, or they'll keep your old board and they'll send you a refurbished board. So just bear that in mind, because you might just rush to order it and then realize you got to send your board in for repair, and you may not have realized that. The second way that it's sold is, for example, here, if you go into advanced replacement, basically what that means is you're just buying a full board. Then the prices can be a bit quite expensive, $89.99 for a fully refurbished board. Now, don't just go for the ones that come up at the top of the search, because they are the most expensive ones. So what I was able to do was I was able to find one for this neighbour of mine for around about £45, the one that we found. This is a similar one. This is a refurbished board, As you can see here, it's $39.99, fully refurbished and tested by our engineers, and comes with 12 months warranty. So I think that's quite good value, because these boards, when I was searching on Google, brand new, they're about £280, between 230 and £280. The price can vary. So $39.99 with 12 months warranty is quite a good deal, in my opinion. Obviously, it's going to be a refurbished board, but you know that you've got 12 months warranty. So if you can't afford to get a new one put in, then this is going to be your next best bet. Anyway, what I advised my neighbor was, I said, look, let's order this in for you and I'll fit it. And if it works, that's fine. Then you know it's all working. And what I'll then do is I will look into your other board and see if I can repair it for you. So that's what we did. We ordered one similar to this. That one was the one that we ordered was $46.99. So that one came in and I fitted it for him. The fitting is just the reverse of the way that we took it off. After we had fitted it, I fired it up, and all I had to do was increase the pressure on the water. And once I'd done that, it was working perfectly. And it's been about a week now, and he hasn't reported any issues. So I believe that's working fine. Now, what I'm left with at the moment is his old board, which looks like this. I'm going to go back to the demonstration table and show you or talk to you in a bit more in detail about what I found and what I believe may be the problem. So let's do that now. If you have a look here, right, let's turn this way. Here on the board, right here, there's a fuse inside here. Okay, and you can just pull this off like so. And if you have a look in here, there's a fuse. The first thing you want to do before you touch anything on the board is test that fuse for continuity between these 2 points here. If the fuse is working fine, then you can move on to troubleshooting on the board. If that fuse is blown, change that fuse first. And normally on the inside of the back cover of the boiler, there is a fuse like this, a spare one. There usually be a spare one, so you can take that off, put it on here, and put it on. If it works, that's fine. If not, then you know you've got bigger problems. So I tested the fuse on this one, and the fuse was fine. There was continuity through the fuse. So I was able to put that back in and continued with the troubleshooting other parts of the board. Right, so we've got the main board here in front of us on the demonstration table. I want you to observe these items here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. These here are what we call electrolyte capacitors. They are normally good for about 10 years. Once you pass the 10-year mark, they start to degrade. And what will happen is, if you have a look, let's take this one off from here. I've already taken these off. If you have a look here, this one says 220 UF at 35 volts. So what will happen is, if you test these for capacitance, what you'll find is that they are no longer getting up to 220 UF, and they start to lose their capacity. So normally between 5 and 10% you can get away with, but once you start getting to below 20%, then you know it's you need to most likely replace them, okay, because they're not going to be doing the job that they were designed for. So as I was saying, these electrolyte capacitors, they degrade over time. Before I took these capacitors off the board, the first thing I did was I just checked some of these caps, some of these SMD capacitors with the tester all around the board, around the chips in the different areas of the board. I couldn't find any that were blown, and there was nothing on the board that stood out to me. You know, there was no burnt marks or anything like that. The only thing that I could think of, the only obvious parts that looked like they may have failed, were the electrolyte capacitors. You cannot always test these in circuit while they're stuck on the board, so you have to take them off if you want to test them properly. There are 6 electrolyte capacitors on this board. There's one here, there's 2 here, there's one here, there's one here, and there's a big 400 volt one here. What I did was I removed all of them, and then I removed this one here as well. Okay. So what you want to do before you remove these, what you do is you take a picture, right, that shows you where the capacitors fit onto the board. So when you come to put them back on, you're not confused and you know exactly where they go. Okay, so as we were saying, right, I'm going to show you each capacitor and the rating of each capacitor so you know what you need to look for. The first capacitor from the front here, if you have a look here, this is a 220 UF 35 volt capacitor. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one here is 470 UF, again at 35 volts, and there's two of them. So there's one that came off from here, and this one here is the same. These two are the same rating. Okay, so it's 1, 2, 3, right? The next two that you need to take off is this one here. This one came off from here. Okay, and this one came off from here. These two are rated at 100 volts and 10 UF. So you can see that, right? 100 volts, 10 UF. And the other one is exactly the same, 100 volts at 10 UF. So there's two of them, right? And then you've got the big one here. Okay. Now the big one here is rated at 400 volts and 100 UF. Now, I took them off the board and I did some capacitance tests on these. And what I found was these ones here, they were 10 to 15% below capacity, which, you know, you may still be able to get away with. But as I say, it's coming on to 12 years and it would be good to change them out anyway. Now, this one here was around about, it should be 100 UF and it was around about 80 UF. So that's 20% below capacity. It should be 100 UF. So this one definitely could do with replacing. So what I then did was I got onto eBay and I found all of these, right? And the total cost for all of these from different sellers was around about, I'd say around about £13 with delivery. Okay, some of them you can't buy them as one piece. You have to get them as 2, 3 pieces. Obviously, if you buy them in bulk, then you'll get them for a lot cheaper. But if you're just buying like 1 or 2 at a time, then sometimes they are a bit more expensive generally. So I was able to get hold of the replacements for those. These are the replacements that I was able to source from eBay. This again is a 400 volts 100 UF. It's made by Panasonic. Okay, so I've got that as the replacement for the big one. These here are also made by Panasonic. These are 470 UF 35 volts. There's two of them. Okay, and for the one at the front, that was this one is by Rubicon, which is a very good brand, and it's 220 UF 35 volts. And then these two here are made by Nichicon, and they are 100 volts 10 UF capacitors. So I was able to source all of them. And what I said to my neighbor was, I said, look, I've managed to find replacement capacitors. The cost is going to be about £15 for the parts. I had no intention of charging him for the repair because he is my neighbor and he is elderly. And I just thought I'd do it to help him out, really. So, you know, there was not going to be no cost to him. I just said, as long as you pay for the parts, then I'll be happy to give it a go. Now, there is a possibility that we may put these capacitors back onto the board and the board may still not work, but what I can do is because we've got a working board, I can test against the working board and I can find, I'll be able to locate the faulty component because I've got something to compare it to, even if I don't have a service manual. But for most people, I believe that it should fix the fault just by replacing the capacitors because those are the most obvious parts that can fail on the board. Everything else looks quite solid. So it's going to cost you about £15, right? And then whatever your time is to get this repair done, possibly. And if you spend that £15 and you can't fix the board, you've only lost out £15, right? But if you do fix it, you know, you've saved yourself a lot of money, and what you can do is you can put it away, and the next time when the other board goes wrong, you can put this one in, and you've got a backup for yourself. Okay. So what I'm going to do tomorrow is I'm not going to show you how to take the capacitors off the board and how to put them back on. If you don't know how to do that, then you shouldn't really be messing with any of this. And I've got so many other videos where I show you how to solder, how to take components off and how to put them on. Go through some of my other videos and you'll see how to do that easily. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these caps back onto the board. I will go down to his property and I will attempt to put this board back in, and let's see if it works. If it works, then you know that most likely you can just change out those caps and you'll have a working board. If it doesn't work, what I'm going to do is I've got a thermal camera. I will check the board to see if there's anything that's shorted out. But I can only do that on site. When I'm on site tomorrow, I'll do that and I'll make a video of that and I'll show you that. Okay, so I've got the board that we repaired. As you can see, here's the Nichicon capacitors that we replaced. The 100 volts 10 UF. And the Panasonic 400 volts 100 UF, and also the Panasonic and the Rubicon one that we replaced here. So this is the board that we repaired, or we changed the capacitors out on. And here is the original. You'll recognize the originals because the 400 volts 100 UF is like a blue color capacitor. So this is working at the moment. We're going to remove this and we're going to install our board, and hopefully it fires up straight away. If not, we'll do some thermal camera imaging and we'll see if we can spot any faulty components. So here goes. Right, so I've taken out the working original board, and if you have a look here, you can have a closer look at what the original capacitors look like. They're slightly different, but the rating is what matters. So we've taken that out. Is I've installed the light in here is not too good actually. I've installed the one that we repaired in, and I'm about to put all the connectors back on, and then we'll fire it up and we'll see how it goes. It's quite a funny angle to get in here, but just to show you that it is working, I've got a torchlight here and you can see that the display is on, and we've tested the hot water and it seems to be fine. The heating seems to be fine as well. That's all it was just the capacitors. So if you've got one of these and it doesn't come on, try changing out those capacitors. If it does the job, you're all set. Well, that was quite an adventure. We're going to wrap it up now, so bye for now and have a nice day.